Hey everybody, it's Ty from K2 Data Science and Engineering. In this video, we're going to look at a mockup for our dashboard and then run through the front-end code. If you ever want to create a consumer-facing application, you definitely need to spend time to make sure the design is accessible for users. Normally, you would rope in a UX and UI designer, but basic design isn't hard to do by yourself. There are a couple options. From left to right, we have pen and paper, low fidelity mockups, and then high fidelity mockups. I normally start with pen and paper. Just draw out what you think the product will look like. In this case, it's a dashboard. Then you can move on to a low fidelity mockup with text and image blocks. The final step is a high fidelity mockup with all the finalized colors and styles. In this video, we'll simply take a look at a low fidelity mockup for the dashboard. Before I show the design, you should pause this video and create a mockup by yourself. If you have never used any design tools before, do it on pen and paper. If you have experience with tools like Photoshop or Sketch, feel free to design away. Look at the data we have gathered and come up with a way to visualize and display it. Here I'm using a program called Sketch. It costs $100 for a license. You could also try a program called Figma. It's actually a web-based platform that offers a free tier with 3 projects. The mockup isn't really that complex. It's mainly a bunch of text, objects, and shapes. So you can see we have the title at the top, blog analytics, then we have our total article count, the average reading time, then the top categories and top authors. And then on the bottom, we'll have a graph showing the weekday frequency of articles. As you can see, this is quite simple, but at least it gives us a template to follow as we write our front-end code and develop our Flask app. Now that we have this done, we should code it up. We'll be going back to HTML and CSS. If you aren't intimately familiar with them, don't worry about it. You can just follow along. They aren't too difficult to understand. Here is the static version of our dashboard. So I've taken the mockup and converted it to HTML CSS. So you can see it looks similar. Not all the formatting is exactly the same, but it's close enough. So I can just walk through the HTML and CSS really quickly. So if we start at the top of the document, we have our head tag, and that includes just some meta tags about scaling, and then we're going to be using the Bootstrap CSS framework that contains a lot of commonly used styles, and it gives you access to these via classes. And then we're also going to have our own custom CSS, and then we'll have our own title. Now, at the top of the page, we have, so our entire body is contained in a container, and that fixes the width. Then we have a row here and a column and our heading, blog analytics. So Bootstrap is very row column based, and you can kind of look at a web page and kind of break it down into blocks of rows and columns. And then we have another row here, and then that contains our total article count and our average reading time. Now these are just made up values. Later we'll actually extract the data from our JSON files and put them onto the web page. If you go further down, we have another row, and this is where our top categories are and top authors. So a lot of these tags are part of these classes, are part of the standard Bootstrap specification, like rows and columns and text center. Some of them we've brought in are by ourselves. Here, body, we've added margin, a large heading, and description. So we just defined some basic CSS styles. And then the last row we have is for the graph. So we have a canvas element, and we're using a custom JavaScript down here. So we're importing in the chart.js file. You can go check online about it, but it's basically just a charting package. And I've mainly just copied some of their boilerplate code. If you're not familiar with JavaScript, here we're getting the canvas element, and then we're adding this context on it. And then here we're creating a new chart object, and then we're sending in all these parameters, which are basically the options for the graph. So we're letting it know it's key value pairs, here what type it is, it's a bar graph. Then we have our data, and we have a nested dictionary or hash table, and we have our labels, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Then we have our data here, then we have the color, which is blue, and then we have some options here, not to display the legend, hiding the grid lines for the X and Y axis. And that's pretty much it for our HTML file. And basically what we'll want to do is dynamically insert the values from the JSON into this HTML file. And for that, we're going to use Flask.